Welcome everyone to This Week in Svelte, episode 147. I wasn't here last week, so it's been a while since we've seen each other, and so today will be kind of a chill episode. We're gonna cover the changelog, and that's it. Luckily I'm finding stuff to showcase, so unfortunately I couldn't find anyone for today. But let's jump right into the changelog because we have a while to talk about. So, chore drop dead code that make TSGO fail. I think I opened this PR, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So there was basically this code that was making TSGO fail for some reason, and it was not used. So I said, you know what? Let's remove it. Fix don't reconnect derived when read inside branch root effects. So I think like a reconnected derived is, let me see, memory leak. A derived only read in untracked context is never disconnected from its dependency on destroy. Okay, so it was a small memory leak of a derived that, yeah, okay. Skip unnecessary derived effect in earlier batch. So a derived effect is basically like what powers a weight, like async derived. And so if there was a derived effect, I think like if there was a derived effect in an earlier batch and then it changed in a subsequent batch, you don't need to rerun the old one because it will be override anyway. Avoid declaration tag warning in event handlers. It's effectively just the event handlers part, but basically before this version, if you had a declaration tag, which if you are not familiar is this new way of doing state, like now in Svelte you can do this. Let count is equal to $state 0. And then you can do button and do on click like this and do count plus plus. And if we show count like this, this works. Like, and you can declare a derived. You can declare. Oh, that's way too small for you to see. You can declare a derived. You can declare a state. You can declare whatever you want. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, that the issue was. I think I've actually fixed this. 5.56.4 that I think reading something inside an event listener, like if I do like like let x is equal count. Yeah, this was the mistake. Basically, here you see that like this reference only captured the initial value of count. Did you mean to reference it inside the closure instead? And so the issue was that despite here being a closure, the compiler was not keeping track of these as a closure, and so it was giving the error like if it was like this. And so this is now fixed. So if I do this, it doesn't warn you anymore. Abort derives own abort signal when it disconnects. So I don't know if you remember, because like it's not something that people usually use, but you can get the signal, like the abort signal for each like derived or effect with get abort signal, I think it's called. I can't even remember. And now that abort signal is aborted when the derived disconnect. Before it was not. Ensure state.eager is correctly transformed for SSR output. Oh, that's not like, so it was not always transformed. Basically, state.eager allows you to do this. Let me show you. Let double is equal new, so $sign derived, await new promise. I mean, I can just do, let's do this. Promise, the new promise are set timeout, set timeout, resolve after 1,000 millisecond, and I want to resolve count time 2. Now this should work, I guess, like, and it should show double being, oh, I'm silly, count plus plus. So this should double after 1 second. Yeah, so like, as you can see, basically Svelte, when there is like an await involved in a derivation of some sort, it doesn't update, like the count, like count is actually updated immediately. But to keep the state in sync, we don't update everything at the same time. And the reason is that, like, let's say that I do count times 2 is equal. You can see that, let me do HR. Like, if I do this, you can see that now the state is always in sync. 2 times 2 is 4, 3 times 2 is 6, while if this was like immediately updated, what would happen is that for a second, this would read 3 times 2 is equal to 4. I mean, yeah, 3 times 2 is equal to 4. However, you can actually get that behavior by using state.eager. So state.eager, this is basically saying I want the immediate value and not the value that, like, I want to read the actual value right now. So this changes immediately, and then after a second it changes again. Now, instead of using it like this, where you should really put state.eager is inside the button, because this way you get immediate feedback when you click on the button, and then the derivation happens after a second. So and I guess, like, the problem was that it was not transformed correctly server side. I'm not sure how it was transformed before. Let me quickly check. So where it is? Button. Oh, I need the server actually. Yeah, button escape count. So I think state.eager was just, well, I guess doesn't really make sense to have state.eager. So I wonder if it's just, yeah, it didn't change. So it's probably, it's like more like a niche bug in some specific situation. Okay, so correctly transform declaration tags during SSR. Once again, like declaration tags were not correctly transformed during SSR. So I think I also fixed this. It was, yeah. There was this issue here where if you were doing something like this, it was transforming DT incorrectly, and so type of DT was not a function like it should be, I mean not a date like it should be, but a function, because you really need, like, you would have compiled to this, I think. I can't remember now. But yeah, it was a wrong transformation. Transform computed keys in keyed each destructuring pattern. So if you're destructuring and there was some computed key, and the computed key is, let's open the issue, but the computed key is when you have something like this. Like this is a thing that you can do in JavaScript, and this basically means I want the field that is like with the value of labeled key, not labeled key. So if labeled key is person, this will put the field person inside the variable label. And this was not properly transformed, and now it is. Chain preprocessor source map with an empty sources 0 instead of dropping them. So source maps are what allows the browser or even Vite to give you an error that looks like the actual code that you have in your code base and not like the transformed code. So when you build your application, you get back, or even in dev, like basically when there is a transformation, right? So to run something in the browser, your Svelte component needs to be transformed into a JavaScript file. And that JavaScript file obviously has been completely transformed by the Svelte compiler. Now source maps allow basically to link the two, so that when you throw an error at a specific line, through the source maps, Vite or the browser can tell you, hey, the error is at this line in your actual source code. So not in the compiled code, but in the source code. Now, source maps are kind of risky in a way if you want. For example, Apple once published the source maps of its application by mistake. Claude Code also published the source maps by mistake. And the issue is that if your code is not open source, then through the source maps, you can get the code. And so it's risky if you have a business that you don't want to show the code, because then people can simply get the source map and transform your compiled code into the actual code. But they are very useful. So stuff like Sentry, for example, you can upload the source map to Sentry so that when some error happens in production, they can actually show you the actual code of your application. But you have to do that through a separate channel so that they are not published publicly. Clear previous task reference after abort in tween to prevent memory leak on interrupted tweens. So tween is, as you might know, the class that allows you to tween between two values, which, to be fair, I think is one of the nicest thing about Svelte that is not used a lot. Like, I don't think they are used a lot. I think it's motion, right? Tween, I don't know if you use a lot. But basically what you can do, let's say that you have let count is equal to state 0, let tween count is equal to tween dot off, and you can do count. And what this will do is that the value of tween count will slowly move from one to the other. Dot current, so right now it's 0. I do button, on click, and I do count plus plus. So in this case, whenever I increase count, you will see that, let me do this because it will be messy, this will go up in small increments rather than one small chunk. And obviously, like, this is nice because like, let's say that you use this for a div, for example, right? Let's say that you do this and you do style width is equal to twin count current, right? And then you can style the div so that the width is equal to var width, and then height is equal to, I don't know, 20 pixel, background FF300, which is the Svelte orange. Yeah, I know it by heart. Now, when you increase this, oh yeah, because it's I'm a silly guy. It should be calc time 1 pixel. So now when you increase it, you see that like it's slowly, let's do 100 pixel just so that it's more visible. When you increase it, it will do whoop, and it will do whoop, whoop. So yeah, it's a silly way, but like it can really, like it can be very nice to work with when you have to move something around in a natural way, but you have JavaScript variables, so you don't have to do it by yourself. Don't treat the declaration tag as parts inside each block. So this was another bug that I fixed, I think. But basically, declaration tags were considered parts inside an each block. I don't know if I fixed it. Maybe no. Yeah, I fixed it. Yeah, because basically, like if you open like this, count will not be increased, and the reason why it was not increased is because, let me see, not working. Like basically this variable here, button ref, was declared inside the each block, and so it was transformed in a way that was different from it was different, like since it was declared, like if you see the working example is just moving the div inside, like the declaration inside the div, and the reason is that the each block, I need to zoom in, sorry guys, whenever like a variable was declared inside an each block, it counted like if it was declared here, right? Because before declaration tag, you could not declare a variable inside an each tag, an each block. And so it was counting them as this thing here, like these variables there. And so it was transformed incorrectly. Big release, now let's small release, 5.56.6. Perf, skip unnecessary blocker analysis when compiling components without top-level await. This is the perf of the compiler, because basically when we are running the compiler, we check if there are any blockers. So when you, let me see if I can give you an example. When you do something like, I don't know, count d is equal await promise dot resolve 3, and then you do d, for example. I guess no, that's the wrong one. I need to have a component, import component from component of Svelte, and then I can do component d, right, for example, minus d. Now, if you take a look at the compiled code, you see that we don't actually await D here, right? We have, like in your code, you have await promise immediately, but we don't actually compile, like we don't actually await D immediately. The reason for that is because if we await something here, then the whole pipeline that will render your component will be blocked until this is resolved. And so what we do instead is we do this, and we say, okay, these are the blockers to render this component. Before rendering this component, we need to have a value for D. And so we pass down this $$ promise 0 that say, okay, await this promise and then render this component with the value. So this promise, if you take a look, it will actually assign D. And so by doing this, we can immediately get to rendering this component, which is nice because then if I have D's, for example, D is equal to 4, I can immediately render this component, and this I'm still on the server. I can immediately render this component, where it is, here. So this component gets rendered immediately, there's no await, and this component, and only this component, is rendered after the promise resolve. So that's a nice way so that this component does not have to wait on this await, and only this component has to wait until this await, which is like very smart. Obviously, I didn't think about this, but the point is, we were doing this blocker analysis regardless if there was a top level await or not. And so it was a bit of a perf like error in the compiler. It was minimal, but it's always nice to have a more performant compiler. So now it is. Fix, rerun the drive that had an abort controller on reconnection. So probably like when you had an abort controller inside a derived, because the abort controller, I think it's only created when you actually request for it. Maybe not, I can't remember. But yeah, on reconnection, it will rerun the derived now. Chore provide indent option for print. So if you want, when you are printing something, if you don't remember, now Svelte actually provide a print from Svelte compiler. So you can now have parse and print. And parse will, right? Yeah. Basically, parse will do this. So if you do JSON.stringify parse, this will transform, let me do now 2, and let me wrap it in print. So this will compile a component into the AST. So if I do hey, you can see that this is the HTML, like it's the output of this Svelte component. It's one children with type text and row hey, data hey, right? But you can also do print of this, and this will print the, I can't remember the syntax to print. I think .html maybe. I can't remember it. Let's actually take a look. I'm curious now. Docs, Svelte, special element, runtime, MISC, Svelte, compiler, print, AST. I wonder why it's not working though. Print AST requires an AST. Oh, with modern true. That's the point. Sorry. So you need to parse with modern true for it to work. So this is a modern Svelte AST. So it's a bit different. It has CSS, JS, start, end, type, fragment, blah, 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 blah. And now if I print this, it was the most convoluted way to print hey. I mean, this also gives you the source map, so that's also nice. But yeah, this is the code output of that. So if I do, I don't know, mat.random, this will print hey mat.random. And it will be like the AST will actually have the extension. I'm trying to think. Yeah, no, I guess like it will literally always produce the same thing. Yeah, and now you can also provide an indentation for this. Let's move to SvelteKit, which had 7 new releases. We are in pre-release mode, so there are a lot of release for SvelteKit 3 point next, because we will sooner or like in the very near future we're gonna release SvelteKit 3. So please test it with the next release so that you can actually report any bug if you like find any. Let's see. Detect the structural load and actions export during type generation. Okay, so I guess probably it was skip root export declared through the structuring. It only records identifier declaration. Okay, so if you wanted something like this, if you wanted to do something like this, where you basically, so like to do the type declaration, to do the type generation, sorry, SvelteKit is using the TypeScript compiler to get the output of this and to get the type of this and provide it to the props, right? This was problematic when you were doing something like this. So when you had a load and you were destructuring from that load. And now with this PR is actually working. Ensure CSS URL references are absolute when paths.relative is false. Okay. Align max cookie size with RFC 6265 bis. I guess this is an actual RFC for the cookie, which means that now we have a max cookie size that is like, it's coherent with the RFC. So we have, okay, this is a pre-release. So we have some breaking change. Remove experimental handle rendering errors. I guess like this is a thing that it's currently in yeah, this was a flag that is currently in SvelteKit 2.0, and in SvelteKit 3.0 will be removed. So you don't have to specify it anymore, and you can just ignore it. Breaking, make get request and set response synchronous. Oh, that's nice. I'm curious. Okay. Okay. Yeah, it was a way simpler than I was expecting. Get request, now it's actually synchronous. For some reason it was asynchronous, but it's just using async local storage, so it doesn't need to be. Breaking page URL immutable on a type level. So before, page.url was not immutable, which means that you could technically do page.url is equal to new URL. It wouldn't do anything, but you could technically do it. This is now immutable on a type level, which means that technically you can still do it, but TypeScript will yell at you. We need it to be like, we can't seal it, we can freeze it because we need to update it, obviously, but you shouldn't do it. And so TypeScript will yell at you. Add refresh all and deprecate invalidate all. So invalidate all is a way to invalidate all the load function. And since we now have refresh all that also refreshes the query, you can now refresh all, and also like it will function also as an invalidate all. Allow hyphens in param and matcher names. So now you can actually have an hyphen inside the param matcher. Add error props to generated type. Detect destructural load, we already saw this. Exclude deleted cookies from cookies.getAll so it stays consistent with cookies.get. This is one of the reasons why you have to add cookies through cookies.add in SvelteKit. It's so that in the same request, if you are reading cookies dot, it will actually show you the cookie that you've set in the previous run, basically. Reset failed Svelte boundary on client navigation, so a stale plus error.svelte is torn down. So we are now using a Svelte boundary inside SvelteKit 3, and if it is failed, it needs to be reset so that the plus error.svelte is actually removed, like it's unmounted. Before it was not unmounted. Preserve shared client chunk hashes when the up version change. Oh, that's very nice. So, I didn't know we did this. Like, they're doing a lot of work on SvelteKit 3, and so I'm kinda lost because they are working full time on this. But basically, that's very nice. So basically, the SvelteKit runtime before. So you have a version number that you can specify for SvelteKit. And whenever that version changes, the version, basically, this is a way to check at runtime which version you have of your app, right? So that could be, I don't know, a commit, or it could be something else, okay? Now, by default is the current date. So basically every single deployment will change, right? Unless you specifically say something that is more stable between deployment. However, this means that every single deployment will have a different version, which means that the hash of that file will change. And since the hash of that file will change, every file that imports that file will need to change the hash, which means that their hash will change, and it's quickly spiral down so that basically every single file had a different hash. This is you don't want this, because if you can keep your hashes stable, those files will be cached forever, basically. Like, those are static files, and so when a user accesses your website, it will download them, it will cache them, and then that's it. Like, you don't have to re-download them a new time. So it was a bit annoying because it meant that every new deployment that you did would trigger a redeployment, it would trigger a change. It means that the next time your users join your website, they will download a new runtime, even if the file was basically the same. And that will obviously also have problems for cost for you, because it's a more you would spend more bandwidth for serving this file. So that's a very good change. Okay, we have a new release of SvelteKit 2, fit move define env vars to @svelte.js/kit/env. So now it has a separate export for that. Fix enables CSRF protection in build with a non-production node env value. Okay. Sorry. So even if NodeENV was not production, now client-side request forgery protection is also enabled in this environment, which basically means that you can technically build a dev version of, like, you can build in dev mode to, like, I don't know, enabled, like, to debug something, and client-side request forgery will still be applied. Okay, new breaking changes. Breaking handles resolve is now typed to always return a promise. So resolve, the thing that you get inside your handle, now it's always a promise. Breaking, replace the lib alias with the hashtag lib and remove files.libconfig. So this is, once again, like SvelteKit, I think it's famous for always using the platform. This basically is in Node. So now in Node, let me do this. rcc.im/ oh, come on. Yeah, here it is. So if you are in Node, what you can do is inside your package.json, you can specify, just like you can specify exports, you can also specify imports. So yeah, that's fine. So I can do imports, and if you do imports, you can basically, it needs to start with a hashtag, with a pound. Let me zoom in a bit, and we can actually close this and open this one. Yeah. It needs to start with a hashtag. So let's say that I do lib, and then I do this, and then I do source lib, and I do this. Now, when you do this, what this is saying is that you can now import something using this specifier, and this is actually a glob, which is, if you remember, like if this reminds you of something, is just like the lib alias. So if you do source lib index.ts, for example, let me close this. I can export something here, export const value is equal 42, for example. Now, if I go inside my index.ts, I can now import from, and now I can actually do this lib. Now, since inside my package.json, this goes to search lib, I don't have to specify that. So I can just specify index.ts, and this should work in terms of resolution at least. Value, so if I do this, hello node, value, this should actually work. Yeah, you see? Now, I'm getting a type error here. I think it's because I didn't specify a type here. I mean, it should work anyway. I don't know if this is just StackBlitz weirdness, because technically it should work. It could be just StackBlitz being weird, because like you can also specify this like this. So you can say default is equal to this, and then you can specify types is equal to this. Yeah, but it's still not working, because technically you should always put types first, so that TypeScript can actually pick it up. But yeah, basically the point is, this looks pretty much like the $lib alias, and so now in SvelteKit 3, it will be replaced. Now, obviously, you don't have to set it up yourself. We're gonna do that inside SV, so that basically you just need to move from $lib to #lib. And obviously, if you are using $lib everywhere, you can just specify an alias in the vit config, and it will continue to work. So Don't worry, you don't have to migrate immediately, but this migration is also very easy to do. You literally almost just have to do replace lib with the hashtag lib. So that's it. Breaking, disallow cross-origin form submission without a content type header. I mean, pretty self-explanatory. Breaking, server-only directories in the pod are now treated as server-only everywhere inside the project, except source, roots, and the asset directory. So, if you have a server inside the pod, so if everywhere there is a server inside the pod, everything inside that server folder will be considered as server only. So if you try to import those files outside of the server, it will just not work, and everywhere inside the project. Oh, sorry. Delegate dev static asset. Let me see. Sorry. Where I was. Delegate course handling to Vite for static directory request during development. Okay, so basically, if you're trying to import from static and you have course enabled, now course are handled by Vite and not by my team. No, I think it's fine. Fit, range state, $NV static private, blah, public, and app environment as deprecated alias for $app and private. Oh, come on. Yeah, okay. So I think these were literally removed before, but probably it broke too many apps. So now they are just deprecated alias. I'm sorry, like it's just so difficult to remember this thing, like what is what and how it was and how it is nowadays. So yeah. So perf, cache the default cookie header, parse and avoid allocation of in cookies get. Okay, so the default cookie headers parse is now cached inside cookies get. So it was parsed, and now it is parsed once instead of every time you do cookie get. Avoid client-side code being bundled by Cloudflare Wrangler. Okay, that's nice. Handle reject streamed server data after delayed loads. Okay, so if a load delay something and then reject, it's now handled. Enabled protection in build with unknown production, blah, blah, blah. We already saw it. Another breaking, move define var again, like to kit env. We already saw it. Now it's also in Svelte 3. Treat data protocol URL as external for redirect. Okay, that's interesting. Data is definitely, I'm curious how people are using this. That came up, like you are redirecting to a data endpoint. It's weird. Okay, yeah, makes sense. You could do something like this. Like you can technically, let me you can technically redirect here, basically. Yeah, okay. Perf skipped import graph collection outside client environments. Okay, I don't know what this means. Warn if there are plugins using transform indexed HTML. So in Svelte, you cannot use transform indexed HTML. This is a hook from Vite. So if there is any plugin that transform indexed HTML, basically, it will not have effect in SvelteKit because we don't use the index.html from Vite. We use like your app.html is just something that it's there and we use as a template, but it's different from the index.html in normal Vite project. And so if you try to use it, it will not work. Docs update links to hooks documentation. Latest release, breaking config exported from a universal root file takes precedence over a server one. Okay, so if you export a config from a universal root, should take precedence over a server one. I guess it makes sense. Breaking consistent special file name patterns. Okay. Support source map in production. Today it's the day of source map, basically. Support function validator for environment variables. So if you don't want a standard schema, you can also just have a function validator. Better error logging, always nice. Don't treat callable standard schema as function param match. So like, it was changed recently, but basically you can now okay. Yeah, okay. So basically the point is, we were doing a check in SvelteKit where, like, if it is a function, we use the function for function validator. If it's not a function, we invoke the validate schema for param matcher. That's not for environment variable, sorry. You can now use standard schema inside param matcher. The problem is that some param matcher are also a function. So it can be, some standard schema are also a function. So the right check was to actually check if it validate was in there. Reject malformed streamed, oh, come on. Reject malformed streamed data encoding. Okay. Hide stack trace for internal errors like 404. That makes sense. You don't want to give like a 404. You don't want to, in production, you don't want it to have a stack trace. Perf match only unpaired surrogates when escaping HTML. That's that's a lot of word. I guess like the surrogates should be just the. Honestly, I have no idea. Let me check. I don't want to lie to you. Okay. Yeah, I think, yeah, exactly. This is a regex. I have no idea what this means. It's fine. Don't report empty environment variables as missing. Okay, that's fine. So an empty environment variable is not missing. If it's there, but it's empty, it's fine. Chore clarify with hooks run during server root resolution. I think this is a docs PR rather than something else. Okay. A ton of new release here. I guess they are mostly, yeah, pre-release. Allow pre-release version of Svelte 3 to satisfy the peer dependency range. Okay, it's an update to the peer dependency basically. And when you update a peer dependency, you need to publish a major version. Yeah. So all of the adapter will need to have a bump version once Svelte 3 is out, because I mean, I technically here is widening the peer dependency, so shouldn't require a bump, I guess. But I'll see. Adapter node. Allow pre-release version of Svelte 3. Correctly bundle entry points on Windows. Oh my god, Windows. Updated dependency, better error logging. Okay. Adapter static, probably the same. Adapter Vercel, yeah, same. Enhanced image. Replace lib alias with dollars and hashtag lib in the docs. I wonder why it needed a release though. Is it for the docs, or maybe in the maybe it's in the JS doc? We have 2 new release of the OpenCode package, the OpenCode plugin. One, it's actually a really cool one because we add a TUI for the plugin. Let me show you. So I don't know where can I try it. Let me add a new version. So I'll quickly spin up. Let me zoom in. That was a bit of a spoiler. Let me close it. Let me close it. So you didn't see anything. So let me go to stuff and SV create. Let me create, I don't know, OpenCode kit test. Svelte kit minimal using TypeScript. Yeah, honestly, I don't care for that. I just want the Svelte MCP. OpenCode PMPM. So we are now in a Svelte kit project. cd OpenCode kit test. Now, this is using the OpenCode plugin, and I don't know if you know, but let me actually do this. So if I open a new thing and I open VS Code, actually, now that I think about it, yeah, I think this is not using the plugin, so let me actually do it by hand. That's a bit of a shame. Okay, so what you can do is that you can do tui.json and you can create a schema that looks like this. Can't remember if there's also a tui.json. Probably, yeah. Yeah, okay. So basically, you can create a tui.json. Oh, I'm not zoomed in. You can create a tui.json inside your .opencode folder and specify @svelte.js/opencode as a plugin for TUI. Now, what this does is that this also adds a TUI plugin to your OpenCode, which means that basically you can customize this schema inside the TUI. So if you are not aware, if you're using the OpenCode plugin, you can customize this and you can basically say, okay, I want the instruction to be enabled or not. Or you can customize the MCP. You can say, I want the MCP to be disabled, for example, or I want the type to be remote or local. Like this basically allows you to specify which kind of MCP you want. Same thing also works for skills. So in the skills, you can say enabled, and this can either be true or false. And true or false means all the skills or none of the skills, but it can also be an array, and these are the skills that are available. So let's say that you only want to enable the Svelte core best practice skill, you can enable just that skill. And you can also customize the sub-agent. So you can say agents, and then you can say Svelte file editor, I think. I can't remember how it's called. And then you can specify a bunch of stuff here, but obviously you can also enable or disable the whole thing. So if you don't want sub-agent, you can say enabled false, and it will not work. Now, all of this is nice, but you have to know all of these. You have to like know what are the possible values and stuff like that, and also you have to juggle with JSON. So now if you run OpenCode with the TUI plugin enabled, you have 2 new menus. So I can do Svelte plugin and it will open the thing directly. You can select if you want to like change the global or the project one. So if you select the project, you get a nice little UI to select what you want to be enabled, so local or remote, like this, if it's enabled or not, and if the subagent is enabled or not, the instruction, if it's enabled or not. You can select the skills like this. You can change the subagent settings like the temperature, blah, blah, blah. And all of this is automatically saved on file. You can also revert them if you want. So it's a nice way for you to actually get something nicer to configure your OpenCode plugin. We also released another thing because we realized that the OpenCode plugin was not working for the app, the desktop app, because while the TUI is using ban, the desktop app is using Node, which can't import TypeScript file, so it was not working. Also, another small bit that I want you to say, if you are using the Svelte.js OpenCode plugin, so OpenCode basically caches the plugins, and it caches the plugin inside .cache OpenCode packages. So if I do this and I do ls, you can see that like those are all the plugins that I've installed. And if I go to cd as Svelte.js and I do ls, you can see that I have all these packages installed and cached, right? Now, why is this a problem? It's a problem because if you just have OpenCode, here, when a new version comes out, it will use the cached version and not the new version, which is a problem because obviously you will not get the new niceties. So every once in a while, if you use OpenCode, go here and delete a bunch of stuff. I have a PR open so that it will actually warn you when there is a new release, but you have to like do it the first time before. So please do it, clean up your cache, reinstall whatever you need so that you will get the new version. 2 new releases of Svelte package. Warn when using a server file inside a server directory without importing a server-only module. Fit, transform, import aliases into relative imports in files. Import aliases into relative imports in files. Oh, that's nice actually. So basically when you do Svelte package now, lib alias is removed from SvelteKit. You can always get it back by configuring an alias, the node, blah, 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 blah. All paths are now transformed into tsconfig path aliases in our generated tsconfig. We now also transform import map paths into relative paths. So when you do this from bus, it will become that. That's very nice. So if you are importing, like if you do stuff like this, it will actually transform it into the right file, which is nice. Okay. 2 new release of ESLint plugin Svelte. Add no bind value on checkable inputs. Okay, so if you have like basically this is an ESLint rule that will warn you, presumably, but you can also add it as an error when you try to bind value on an input type checkbox, which is nice. It's an error that I made sometime. Add no conflicting module names rule. Ah, that's curious. I wonder what conflicting module names are we talking about. Oh, okay. So if you have something like foo.svelte and foo.svelte.ts, it will import as foo.svelte, but this doesn't, like, you don't know if it's foo.svelte or foo.svelte.ts. So this is an ESLint rule that basically forces you to like switch to the full qualifier. That's nice. When a sibling file with the same name, same base name and conflicting extension exists. So if you have foo.svelte and foo.svelte.ts or foo.svelte.js, all of this, it will report. That's nice. Okay, let's go back and we have a new release of extension. Fit 0config for plus error.svelte props. We have 3.2 new release of SV. Add reactivity to Paraglide. So now in the Paraglide demo, you will actually get Paraglide. Emit Paraglide TypeScript declaration for reliable language server updates. Remove Paraglide reactive class. So it was added and then reverted because from Paraglide they say we don't want that. Sure, bump better out to 1.6 and migrate CLI to the out package. So this was a problem with the better out CLI package. They are doing an actual good job. They are shimming the virtual models when you generate your out. And it was failing with the new modules, so now we bump better out to the latest version. Ignore types flag when using the add-on template. Okay. Svelte to TSX, 0config plus error svelte. We have also a new release of dvalue. Oh my god, that's a lot of stuff. Serialized data views, subviews with the correct byte offset and length. Resolved circular reference through custom revivers when payload is already hydrated. Uneval now produces valid output for repeated empty map or set. Serialized temporal values referenced more than once in uneval. Emit valid.js for this. Preserve shared reference. Emit uneval reconstruction. Do not gross parse array by one shot in uneval. Dvalue is a very nice library by Rich, obviously. The father of all the nice library that basically allow you to serialize and deserialize a bunch of extra value like temporal or big int 64 array. We have a new release of ESWrap. Add boundary token language option that anchors structural tokens, array, object, brackets, blah, 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 with one character source location. So node boundary position resolved through the source map instead of being attributed to the previous token. Off by default, output is byte identical either way. That's a very complex release. Magic string, I think, yeah, magic string actually got a major release and now it's ESM only. And magic string is basically a way to edit a string that also produce source maps. Today is the source map episode. That also produce source maps, and it will, like you can basically change a string, like change multiple parts of the string without losing that information in the first place. It's a bit weird, but add fast path for non-exclusion indent. Trim replacement longer than the range they replace. Use a map for tracking chunks. Okay, that was it. It's a whole hour of me blabbering. Thank you anyone for showing up. Thank you anybody for following this, and I'll see you guys probably next Friday. No, actually, next Friday. Next Friday I'll be like earlier because it's also the maintainer meeting. So yeah, thank you everybody. See you next Friday. Bye bye.